Hi dear students, welcome to Kavita's Neet classes. In this lecture, we shall discuss about blood and its components. Blood. Blood is a fluid as well as a tissue. It is a specialized body fluid and it is a connective tissue as well. How can we call blood as a tissue? Because it is a collection of specialized cells. So we have cells like RBC, WBC, platelets. So a collection of all these which is suspended in a fluid called as plasma, isn't it? That is why we call blood both as a tissue, a connective tissue, as well as it is called as a fluid. So blood is a fluid connective tissue that consists of plasma, which is the liquid straw-like, it is a straw colored fluid substance, not liquid exactly, it is a fluid substance. Just like how in a cell we have cytoplasm, isn't it? Cytoplasm is a jelly-like substance in which various organelles like mitochondria, ribosomes, nucleus, etc. are suspended. Similarly, in blood we have a fluid component called plasma. And in the plasma, we have other cells like the RBC, WBC and the platelets suspended in that. So blood is a fluid connective tissue that consists of plasma, blood cells and platelets. So what is the primary function of blood? So the primary function of blood is transportation of oxygen and nutrients to various parts of the body, to various cells, and then also collection of carbon dioxide and returning it back to the heart. Then this process keeps continuing. That is what we study in the circulatory system, isn't it? Circulation of blood, which we shall be discussing in our future lectures. So it circulates throughout our body, delivering oxygen and nutrients to various cells and tissues, and blood makes up around 8% of our total body weight. So blood is both a tissue and a fluid, and the typical pH of blood is around 7.35 to 7.45. So blood is basically alkaline in nature. It is not acidic in nature. Okay, blood is alkaline in nature. And blood runs through veins, arteries, capillaries, and the entire blood, if you see, around 55% of blood is composed of plasma and 45% of it is composed of blood cells. So the blood cells, that is RBC, WBC and platelets, are also called as formed elements of blood. Formed elements of blood. The blood, its composition, the various cells of blood, this entire topic is very, very important for NEET examination because you can get many questions from this topic. Though the topic appears to be simple, it is extremely important for this examination. So what are the components of formed, what do we mean by formed elements? Formed elements means RBC, WBC plus platelets. So all the cellular component of blood comes under the formed elements. So plasma is around 55% of blood. So in blood, if you see, around 55% of blood is composed of plasma, whereas these formed elements, which includes RBC, WBC and platelets, makes up around 45% of blood. Okay, so you can see that in an average adult, in an average human, the percentage or the volume of blood is 4.5 to 5.6 liters, and women usually tend to have a lower blood volume in comparison to men. That is because of the high fat content present in women. However, during pregnancy you can find that in women also there is a 50% increase in the blood volume. So what is plasma? What is blood composed of? As I told you, blood is composed of plasma, and the cells like white blood cells, platelets and red blood cells. So plasma consists of 55% of blood, whereas the white blood cells and platelets are forming around 4% of blood, and then RBCs account for around 41% of blood. So the white blood cells, RBCs and platelets, which together form the formed elements, compose around 45% of blood. The remaining 50% of blood is plasma. Okay, so did you get it? So in the blood, totally in 55% is plasma and 45% is the formed elements. Under that, RBC is 41% and WBC plus platelets is 4%. So this 41 plus 4 becomes 45 plus 55 of plasma becomes total 100%. Okay, so these numbers are important. It's always advisable that you remember these numbers. First, blood plasma. Blood plasma is a straw-colored, viscous fluid which constitutes around 55% of blood. Around 90 to 92% of plasma is water and the rest of it is proteins. So what are the proteins which are present in plasma? They are fibrinogen, globulins and albumins. So 90 to 92% of plasma is water and the remaining part of it is proteins. So under these proteins we have three important proteins, that is fibrinogen, globulins and albumins. Fibrinogen are responsible for clotting or coagulation of blood. What do you mean by blood clotting? Whenever we have an injury, we cut our skin, there will be blood flowing out. But within few seconds, you can find that blood flow automatically stops and it forms a clot in that place of injury. That is what we mean by blood clotting or coagulation, right? So in the protein component of the plasma, we have three important proteins, that is fibrinogen, globulins and albumins, and it is the fibrinogens which are responsible for clotting of the blood. And then the globulins, the second protein globulins, are involved in defense mechanism. So what do you mean by defense mechanism? So whenever we have an infection, when some pathogens like bacteria, virus, fungi, they enter into our body and they try to create disease in us, we have our defense mechanism, which is the immune system, which fights against that, isn't it? So the globulins which are present in the plasma are actively involved in the defense mechanisms of our body. So fibrinogen is responsible for clotting and the globulins are responsible for the defense mechanisms of the body. Next comes the albumins. So what is the function of albumins? Albumins are involved or they help in osmotic balance. So this is very important. That is, the function of the three different proteins which are present in plasma is important. First one is fibrinogen, whose function is or which helps in blood clotting or coagulation of blood. Second one is globulin, which takes part in the defense mechanisms of the body. And third one is the albumin, which is responsible for osmotic balance in the body. Okay, so overall in plasma makes up around 55% of the blood. So in plasma, around 90 to 92% is water and rest of it is proteins, among which we have three important proteins: fibrinogen, globulin and albumin. So here you can get a question. So now try to understand from this topic, from this slide, what are the possible questions which you can get in the examination. So you might get the percentage of plasma and the formed elements. So we already discussed the percentage of plasma is 55%, the percentage of WBC and platelets is what the percentage is, right? And then the percentage of RBC, that can be made up as a question. And then similarly here they can give you a match the following kind of a question. So fibrinogen, So you can get a question like, match the following. Fibrinogen. Okay, first fibrinogen and then globulin. And then next one is albumin. And on the other side, you can have their functions. First one is defense function. Okay, second one is clotting of blood. And then third one is osmotic balance. And they will give you different options of choosing like this. So this kind of question can occur in your exam. So like this, you have to keep guessing what kind of questions can be made from this topic. So in addition to these prominent proteins, that is the fibrinogen, globulin and albumin, there are also small amounts of other minerals like calcium, magnesium, sodium, and also glucose, amino acids, lipids, etc. So there are factors which are responsible for coagulation or the clotting of blood, which are present in the plasma in the inactive form. Okay, there are certain factors which are present in the inactive form in the plasma, and that gets activated when we have an injury, when we have a cut, when we have an injury. That time those factors will get activated and blood coagulation process begins. So later in another lecture I will be discussing how exactly, what is the mechanism and what are the enzymes and what are the proteins which are involved in the coagulation of blood. Since this is a lecture on the blood and its components, we will just discuss it briefly. So the blood plasma contains 90 to 92% of water. In addition to that, it contains three important proteins: fibrinogen, globulin and albumin, and it also contains other minerals in tiny amounts like sodium, calcium, magnesium and so on. It also contains glucose, amino acids, lipids. In addition to all of this, blood also contains certain factors which are responsible for blood clotting or coagulation of blood. However, it is not active all the time. It is still present in the blood. When we have an injury or a cut, that will get activated. Fine? So where do these blood cells come from? Where are the blood cells synthesized? Blood cells develop from a hematopoietic stem cells. So the hematopoietic stem cells are formed in the bone marrow through a highly regulated process called as erythropoiesis. So in the bone marrow, you know what is the bone marrow, right? Inside the bone marrow, there are these stem cells called as hematopoietic stem cells which differentiate to give us the blood cells. So it is from these hematopoietic stem cells, all the blood cells like the RBC, WBC, platelets, all of them are formed. Okay, so hematopoietic stem cells are capable of transforming into red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets, all the three of them. The stem cells can be found in the blood, in the bone marrow and also in the umbilical cord of newborn babies. That is why recently we have this concept of umbilical cord banking or umbilical blood banking. So what is that? So what happens is, this umbilical cord region, which is rich of stem cells, during the time of delivery of the child, the stem cells present in the umbilical cord is taken and it is preserved for several years. So by doing this, what we can do is, even after the child grows up, say it becomes 20 years or 30 years old, even then if it gets any disease, these stem cells which we had saved from the umbilical cord can be utilized to treat that child against any disease. So it is very, very important. So these are the three important sources of hematopoietic stem cells. So we can find stem cells in blood, in the bone marrow and also in the umbilical cord of the newborn babies, and that is why it is preserved. However, it is a quite expensive procedure, so it is not pretty common, but however, we have the concept of umbilical cord blood banking. So stem cells from all these three sources can be used to treat a wide variety of diseases including blood cancer, lymphoma, bone marrow failure and various immune disorders. So did you understand where blood cells come from? There is, inside the bone marrow, we have hematopoietic stem cells which undergo differentiation to produce RBC, WBC and platelets. This process by which the hematopoietic stem cell, so I told you we have hematopoietic stem cells which differentiate to form the RBCs, WBC and the platelets. This process by which the hematopoietic stem cells differentiate to form the blood cells is called as, this process is called as hematopoiesis. So please try to remember this word hematopoiesis. You might get it in the choices somewhere. So if in case you don't know the answer for that, at least if you can recall this and understand what is the process, what is hematopoiesis exactly mean, you will be able to at least rule out one or two options so that you can arrive at the right option, isn't it? Fine. So this is the hematopoietic stem cell which I was telling you, right? So this is a stem cell. It is this stem cell, the hematopoietic stem cell, which differentiate into RBCs, which differentiate into WBCs. Under WBCs, we have 5 kinds of WBCs. That is, again we can classify them as granulocytes and agranulocytes. So under granulocytes means, so the cells which have presence of granules are called as granulocytes. So under WBC we have eosinophil, which is a granulocyte, basophil and neutrophil. Okay, so here you can see these 3, that is the eosinophil, basophil and the neutrophil. All these 3 are the granulocytes. And then in addition to that, we also have lymphocytes and monocytes. So here they have mentioned it as natural killer cells. In the next slide, I'll be telling you what is a natural killer cell and what is a monocyte. So we have red blood cells, we have platelets and we have WBCs. All of these 3 cells are, they are produced in the bone marrow from the hematopoietic stem cell. The hematopoietic stem cell undergoes differentiation to produce the red blood cells, the white blood cells as well as the platelets through the process called as hematopoiesis. First, let's discuss about what are RBCs. RBCs are also called as erythrocytes. Okay, please remember this name. RBCs are also called as erythrocytes. They are the most abundant of all the cells. So in comparison to WBC and platelets, you can find RBCs are the most abundant cells which are present in the blood. So a healthy adult man has an average of 5 million to 5.5 million of RBCs in every 3 ml of blood. So a healthy adult man will have sometimes even these questions, these factual questions will also arrive in your exams. So please try to remember this. A healthy adult man on an average has 5 to 5.5 million of RBCs in 3 ml of blood. And then RBCs do not have nucleus. Okay, so RBCs do not have nucleus and that we call it as enucleated. The term to indicate the absence of nucleus is called as enucleated. So RBCs are devoid of nucleus or they do not have nucleus and they are biconcave in shape. Here you can see this is what we call it as biconcave shape of the RBC. And the RBCs have a red colored iron containing complex protein called as the hemoglobin. Okay, so RBCs are devoid of nucleus. However, they have a protein which contains a iron component that is called as the heme, and it is this heme component which gives the red color to blood. Got it? So RBC is devoid of nucleus. It does not have nucleus. However, it has a hemoglobin which is responsible for carrying oxygen, that gives the oxygen carrying capacity for the blood, and it has an important iron component in it. That is what gives the red color to RBCs. So you can find that the healthy individual has around 12 to 16 gram of hemoglobin. A healthy adult has around 12 to 16 gram of hemoglobin in every 100 ml of blood. And then already we know how the RBCs are produced in the bone marrow through the process of erythropoiesis, isn't it? The erythropoietic stem cell differentiates into different cells of the blood like RBC, WBC and platelets through the process of erythropoiesis. So what happens in the bone marrow is the erythropoietic stem cell differentiates and it matures to form the final RBC, and this time, that is the time taken for the maturation of RBC, is 7 days. Okay, RBC production happens in the bone marrow and the maturation takes place in 7 days, that is from the hematopoietic stem cells to the final production of the mature RBC. That duration is 7 days, and this is controlled by a hormone called as erythropoietin. So it is this hormone called as erythropoietin which stimulates the production of RBCs in the bone marrow. Erythropoietin stimulates the production of RBCs in the bone marrow, and after that it will produce the mature RBCs in 7 days. So where do we get this erythropoietin from? Erythropoietin is a hormone which is produced by the kidneys. Got it? So erythropoietin is a hormone which is produced by the kidneys, and it is this erythropoietin hormone which stimulates the production of RBCs inside the bone marrow. Then RBCs have an average lifespan of 120 days, and then after 120 days they are destroyed in the organ called as spleen. That is why spleen is also called as graveyard of RBC. Okay, did you all understand about RBC? So RBCs are biconcave cells. They are the most abundant in the blood. They do not have a nucleus, and the maturation of RBCs takes 7 days. They are produced inside the bone marrow upon stimulation by a hormone called as erythropoietin, which is produced by the kidneys, and then after that it takes 7 days for the RBC to mature completely. And then the lifespan of RBC is 120 days, and it is the largest. The other cells like WBC have much lesser lifespan. So RBC has the highest lifespan of 120 days, after which it is destroyed in the organ spleen. So here you can get many questions. A question on what amount of RBCs are present in blood, and what is the, here you can also get a question on what is it that causes the red color of the blood. So it is the heme component or the iron containing complex called hemoglobin, which is essential for carrying oxygen. And then you can get a question on the biconcave shape. So what is the shape of RBC, and different choices, different shapes can be given. Then you can also get a question on how many grams of hemoglobin is present in every 100 ml of blood. And you can also get a question on the production or the synthesis of RBCs in the bone marrow by the process of erythropoiesis. So what is the erythropoietin hormone, where it is secreted, and how it stimulates the production of bone marrow, and then what is the time which is needed for the maturation of the RBCs. So all of these can be potential questions. Okay, then again the average lifespan of RBC, this can also be a question. So it is 120 days, and which organ the destruction of RBCs happen, that is the spleen. So in this single slide you can find so many, at least 5 to 6 different possible questions which can appear in your examination. Now moving on to WBC. So RBCs are also called as erythrocytes. WBCs are also called as leukocytes. So most of the times what happens is, in the question you will never find them mentioning as RBC or WBC, because it's very easy for us to differentiate between RBC and WBC, whereas to a certain extent it's confusing to differentiate between erythrocyte, leukocyte, isn't it? So most of the time in the questions you can find as erythrocytes and leukocytes only, so that is one way of confusing you, because you are under the pressure of solving a question in a very little time span, isn't it? So please remember all these words. What is RBC? RBC is erythrocyte. What is WBC? WBC is leukocyte. Okay. So leukocytes are also known as WBCs, and they are colorless. Okay. So they have nucleus, however they do not have any color. They are colorless. Why are they colorless? Because they do not have hemoglobin. They do not have the heme component, just like how it is in RBC. That is why they do not have any color. However, WBCs have nucleus. They are nucleated. Okay, they are nucleated and they are relatively less in number in comparison to the RBC. So the number of RBCs in blood is very high, whereas WBCs is less in number. And you can find that on an average there are around 6,000 to 8,000 millimeter cube of RBCs in the blood, and the life of RBCs is much shorter lived. So sorry, not RBC, WBC. So the life of leukocytes or WBC is short lived, whereas RBCs have a long lifespan of 120 days. So like this, when you compare, as in how you read about WBC, you need to keep comparing with RBC so that you will not forget it. Okay, so then there are two categories of WBCs, that is the granulocytes and the agranulocytes. Under granulocytes are the cells in which granules are present. Here you can see the presence of granules, isn't it? These are granulocytes. So we have three kinds of granulocytes, that is the neutrophil, the eosinophil and the basophil. Okay, and under the agranulocytes we have the monocyte and we have the lymphocyte. Okay, so under granulocytes we have eosinophil, basophil and the neutrophil, whereas under agranulocytes, here you can see agranulocytes means they do not have granules. So under agranulocytes we have monocyte and lymphocyte. So what is monocyte? See, monocyte, these are the cells which control the natural killer cells. Okay, they control the natural killer cell differentiation to different effector phenotypes. Okay. So did you understand about WBC? WBCs are colorless because of the lack of hemoglobin. So this can also be questioned. So the presence of color in RBC is due to the presence of hemoglobin, which has the heme component. So here in WBC they are colorless due to lack of hemoglobin, and then they are nucleated. Okay, and then this is the amount of WBCs that is present. And again here one important question which you can get is, which are the granulocytes and which are the agranulocytes? So you can get a match the following kind of question. So, or you can get a question, which are the granulocytes? Choose the options. Which are the granulocytes among the WBCs or leukocytes? And they can give you all these five. And below that they will be, you will have the option like 1, 2 and 3, 1, 3, 4, 1, 4, 3 and 5, something like this. There you will have to choose wisely that it is the granulocytes are neutrophil. See, you can remember it like this, phils. So neutrophil, eosinophil, basophil. So all these phils are granulocytes. Apart from that we have the lymphocytes and the monocyte, they are the agranulocytes. Isn't it? Again in a lymphocyte we have the B lymphocyte and we have the T lymphocytes as well. Okay. We have two kind of lymphocytes, that is the B lymphocyte and the T lymphocyte. The B lymphocyte are responsible for antibody mediated immune response. So it is the B lymphocytes which produce the antibodies whenever an antigen is invading a body or it is entering a body. It is the B lymphocytes which produce antibodies, and it is the T lymphocytes which mature in the thymus which help the B lymphocytes in the production of the antibodies. So much more in depth in-depth understanding of the B lymphocytes and the T lymphocytes we will get when we discuss the chapter on immunity. So I will be doing that lecture also very soon. We shall discuss more about B lymphocytes and T lymphocytes in that lecture. So now let's discuss the functions of WBCs. So we already know we have three granulocytes, that is eosinophil, basophil and neutrophil, and then two agranulocytes, that is monocyte and lymphocyte. Now we shall discuss the composition. So what percentage of this is present? So this is also a possible question in your examination. So highest amount of WBC present in our blood is neutrophil, which is around 60 to 70%. So the neutrophils and the monocytes are the phagocytic cells which destroy the foreign organisms entering into the body. So how do they function? Say this is a neutrophil or a monocyte. Whenever a foreign particle is trying to enter into a body, they will engulf it. Suppose this is the foreign particle which is trying to enter into a body. They will try to engulf it. So here this foreign particle will be engulfed. It will be engulfed by the phagocytic action and it will be destroyed inside the cell. This is what we call it as phagocytosis, that is engulfing or capturing, trapping the foreign body and destroying it within the cell. You understand what is phagocytosis, right? So it is the neutrophils which are present in the highest percentage. Neutrophils are the highest percentage of WBCs present in our blood. So it is around 60 to 70%. And the neutrophils and the monocytes are actively involved in the phagocytosis. So they capture the foreign organisms and destroy it by the process of phagocytosis. Next comes the basophils. So basophils secrete a histamine, serotonin and heparin. So histamine is, they secrete histamine. So histamine, serotonin and heparin are all involved in inflammatory responses. So whenever any foreign particle tries to enter into your body, say some particle is entering into your eyes, automatically your eyes start producing tears, isn't it? That is the immediate response of the body towards the particle which is trying to enter into your body. So even the tears also contain histamine. Okay. Similarly, you can find many such reactions. Even when we are breathing, if suppose some particle which is enters into our respiratory system, automatically we start sneezing, isn't it? So those are all anti-inflammatory reactions. So the basophils secrete the histamine, serotonin and heparin. Heparin is actually related to blood clotting. So we have basophils which secrete histamine, serotonin and heparin, which are involved in the inflammatory reactions. So we can find that basophils percentage is 0.5 to 1%. Then we have the eosinophils which resist the infection and they are also associated with allergic reactions. Okay, so what is the percentage of eosinophils? We have around 2 to 4% of eosinophils. Then comes the lymphocytes, which are of two types, as I already told you. The B and the T cells, which are responsible for immune responses in the body. That is, B cells are responsible for production of antibodies and the T cells help the B cells in the process. Okay, so these are the functions of WBCs and the percentage of WBCs present in the blood. The highest being neutrophils. Okay. So did you understand what are the different WBCs, what is their percentage and what are their function? And these, the functions of the basophils, neutrophils, eosinophils and the lymphocytes can appear as a match the following question. So you can get a question like this. So they would have in one column, they would have mentioned eosinophil, basophil, neutrophil, monocyte, and in another column they would have mentioned the different functions. Okay, this is one column. In one column they would have mentioned the different cells, different WBCs, and in another column they would have mentioned the functions. And they will ask you to match the right one, which cell is associated with which function. And they would have given options one matches with 2 like that, and you have to choose the right option over there. Okay, so these are the possible questions over here. Next, moving on to platelets or thrombocytes. So what is RBC? RBC are erythrocyte. WBCs are leukocyte, and platelets are thrombocytes. So in most of the questions, they will not mention it as RBC, WBC and platelets. Instead, in the options, you will have these words only, that is leukocyte, erythrocyte and thrombocyte. So please do not get confused among this. So platelets or thrombocytes are small colorless cell fragments in our blood that form clots and they prevent bleeding. So these are the thrombocytes. Okay, they are small colorless cell fragments. So even the WBC does not have color and platelets also do not have color, only RBCs have color, which is red. Okay, so these are colorless fragments in our blood, and these are responsible for clotting and preventing of bleeding. As I already told you, whenever you have a cut or an injury, after initially the blood starts flowing out, but after few seconds it starts forming a clot in order to prevent further loss of blood. That is called as coagulation of blood or blood clotting. So it is the platelets which are responsible for that. So the platelets are the cell fragments from the megakaryocytes. So there are some special cells called as megakaryocytes in the bone marrow, and it is from these megakaryocytes the platelets are formed. Okay, then normally in blood you can find there are 1,500, 1,50,000 to 3,50,000 platelets per millimeter cube. This is the amount of platelets that is present in blood, and platelets release a variety of substances which are involved in coagulation of blood. Okay, so what is serum? So now you might get a question, so what is the difference between plasma and serum? So plasma devoid of clotting factors or fibrinogen. I already told you there are certain factors which are responsible for clotting which is present in the plasma in an inactive state, isn't it? So the plasma minus those clotting factors is serum. So many a times you will get these questions on difference between plasma and serum. So do not get confused. Plasma minus clotting factors is nothing but serum. Okay, so what is serum? Plasma minus clotting factors is serum. So platelets release variety of substances which are involved in the coagulation of blood. So in detail about coagulation of blood and the coagulation of blood and serum we will be discussing in our next video. Okay. So now we have understood what is blood, what is the functions of blood, and what are the various components of blood, that is erythrocyte, leukocytes and thrombocytes, how they are produced, what is the amount that is present in the blood, isn't it? Then what are the functions of each of these? So I hope you have a very good understanding of this. So now we shall try to solve some previous year questions based on this topic. So first question, name the blood cells whose reduction in number can cause clotting disorders. So which are the cells which are responsible or which has the factors necessary for clotting of blood? That is the thrombocyte or the platelets. So see here again, I told you earlier itself in the answer, in the question or in the option, nowhere you can find them mentioning RBC, WBC and platelets, because that's very easy to remember. Whereas leukocytes, erythrocytes and thrombocytes is slightly confusing, and that is why they will use those terms only. So do not forget that and keep remembering it again and again. So the reduction in the number of the thrombocytes can cause the clotting disorders. So the answer is D. Moving on to the next question. In column 1, we have the proteins present in plasma, that is fibrinogen, globulin and albumin. And then in column 2, we have the functions. So this mechanism should come here, just ignore that. So what is the function of fibrinogen? It is blood clotting. So for 1, we have to get 2 as the option. So D is the right answer. So once you are confident with 1, so fibrinogen, we are sure that it is for blood clotting. You can choose that answer and take it and move on to the next question without even wasting time matching the others. Okay, so these are the important tips which you have to follow in order to save time. Moving on to the next question. Serum differs from blood. Just now I told you what is the difference between serum and plasma. So it lacks antibodies? No. It lacks clotting factors. So C is the right answer. Next question. The adult human RBCs are enucleate. Correct. RBCs do not have any nucleus. So which of the following statements is most appropriate? So when you get these kind of words, you have to remember that. You have to keep that in mind while looking at the answer options. So which of the following statements are most appropriate for this feature? So they do not have nucleus, we know that. So why is it so? Because of they do not need to reproduce? No, that is not the answer. They are somatic cells? No. They do not metabolize? No. None of these options are even related to the question. So the only option that is left is all their internal space is available for oxygen transport. So I told you they have the globulin protein, hemoglobin, isn't it? So that the function of the hemoglobin is to transport oxygen to various cells and tissues. So this is the right option and D is the right answer. Which of the following human organs is called as graveyard of RBCs? So destruction of the RBCs happens in the spleen. So C is the right answer. Which one of the following plasma proteins is involved in the coagulation of blood? So I told you we have 3 plasma proteins, isn't it? We have fibrinogen, globulin and albumin. So which of them is responsible for coagulation of blood? It is fibrinogen. So that D is the right answer. So there is no DNA in mature RBCs, a sperm, a mature spermatozoan, a hair root, a enucleated ovum. So all of these have DNA. Only the RBCs do not have DNA. So A is the right answer. The hemoglobin content per 100 ml of blood of a normal healthy adult is 12 to 16 gram. So I showed it to you in a slide, isn't it? It is 12 to 16 grams of blood per 100 ml. That is the amount of hemoglobin that is present per 100 ml in a healthy adult. So globulins contained in human blood are primarily involved in osmotic balance? No. It is albumins which are involved in osmotic balance. Oxygen transport, that is hemoglobin, isn't it? So clotting of blood is carried out by fibrinogen. Defense mechanism is carried out by globulin, isn't it? So it is the globulins which carry out the defense mechanism. So D is the right answer. The most active phagocytic white blood cells are, we know, neutrophils and monocytes are the phagocytic cells which carry out phagocytosis of the foreign particles which are entering into our body. So it is B is the right answer. Neutrophils and monocytes, B is the right answer. So which type of blood cells, WBCs, are concerned with release of histamine? So release of histamine, it is, answer is basophils. D is the right answer. And then a drop each of following is placed separately on 4 slides. which of them will not coagulate? So a drop of blood serum, a drop of whole blood, blood plasma and sample from thoracic duct. All of these will be placed on a slide. So which will not coagulate? So we know serum. So what is serum? Plasma minus clotting factors is serum. So it is blood serum which will not coagulate. So as soon as you know, if you know the definition of serum, what is serum? It is the plasma which is devoid of clotting factors. So without even going to the other three options, you can simply select the first option, which is the right answer. With this, we come to the end of this lecture, blood and its components. In the future lectures, I'll be discussing about RH blood grouping, ABO blood grouping and plasma, serum, much more, and even about other topics as well. If you have any queries with respect to this topic, you can comment in the comment section below, and you can also subscribe to my channel. You can also connect with me on my social media handles. Until we meet in the next video, take care, bye, have a good day.